there, and welcome to another episode of HomeTech.fm. Jason Griffin here. So happy to be with you. We've got a little bit of a different format here tonight, in the sense that Seth actually had an engagement, so he could not make it tonight. So you've got just me here, solo, doing a quick intro. We're gonna kind of dive right into the interview here tonight. We've got a really interesting conversation with Shaun Springer. And Shaun is the founder and CEO of a company called Astro, and they're the maker of the Twist light bulb, which, if you're not familiar with this light bulb, it's a product that was just released, just formally announced this week. It got a fair amount of coverage in the tech press, and it's a pretty cool product, pretty neat. We won't get into it too much here because, obviously you're going to hear about it in the interview, but it's a combination light bulb, and they've also got one model that has an integrated speaker. And, they've got models that are just a light bulb, and they've done some cool things with the lighting in addition to obviously having the audio component there. And really an interesting product. And Shaun actually has a background in the smart home that I think a lot of the listeners to our show will find interesting. He's a former, Crestron guy, actually worked at Crestron and did some engineering over there, and really, interesting guy, interesting take on the smart home, and cool looking product. So I really, I've been talking to Shaun for a while, and I've been looking forward to having him on the show, and I really enjoyed the conversation, and we hope you do as well. As always, I just want to thank you for tuning into Home Tech. We really appreciate it. If you have any feedback at all, we always, love hearing from our listeners. You can stop by the HomeTech.fm website and leave us some feedback. You just see the tab across the top there that says feedback, or HomeTech.fm/feedback. Also on Twitter at HomeTech Podcast. And of course, one of the best ways that you can kind of show support for the show would be just hopping over to iTunes and leaving us a review. We've got some great reviews from our listeners over there, and we always appreciate that. So again, we've got Shaun Springer here from Astro. They are the company behind Twist, new light bulb out on the market. Really enjoyed the conversation, and we hope you do too. So without further ado, we will jump into our chat with Shaun. Hey, Shaun, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I'm sure this has been a pretty busy week for you, yeah?
Yeah, it has been extremely busy, and all for the good, and I'm really excited. So.
Yeah, definitely. We're glad to have you. You and I have been kind of exchanging some emails and had I think one or two phone conversations over the last few months. We've been talking for a while, and I know you've had your head down and have been pretty busy, and we look forward to kind of chatting with you about what you've been working on. You got a new product out called Twist, and the company Astro, and we're going to dive into all that. But before we go there, let's talk a little bit about you personally, and maybe for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, maybe give some of your personal introduction and a little bit of your background. I know you've got a background in the smart home industry that a lot of our listeners will find very interesting.
Yeah, so I used to work at Crestron, which is probably the interesting part for most of the people listening. I've been playing with smart home stuff since I was, in the single digits. So when I was about 9 years old, I had seen my, a family friend who I call an uncle, who is the founder of Audio Command Systems, which is a pretty popular installer here. And so when I was, I went over his house. I must have been, like I said, 8 or 9 years old, and this is early 90s, remind you. And so I went into his house, and he takes me into this room, and it's his theater room, like I assume most installers probably have in their own houses. And he hits like a button, and he's like, "Look at this!" And all of a sudden, you hear like the whir of a laser disc spin up, and the lights dim, and the popcorn machine starts, and the 100-inch projector screen comes down, and the projector kicks on, and it was like pretty magical, and it was like to say, it felt like the Jetsons future had finally arrived. I was definitely watching the Jetsons at that time,
right?
And so my whole life I was really fascinated with it. So when I was about 16 or 17 years old, so it must have been 17, in between semesters at college, it gave me the privilege of spending about 4 or 6 weeks every year installing for him. And so I would run wire, and so like one of the first houses I did was Roger Waters out in the Hamptons, and I ran wire around this like massive mansion, and I was like, this is the future of home technology. So I had essentially had a business through college, my own business. And then when that folded in 2008, I went to work for Crestron.
Yeah. And let's talk a little about, what you did at Crestron, because a lot of our listeners will actually be familiar with some of the product that I think maybe you didn't work directly on Ping, but I know what you worked on was sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it was kind of foundational to, kind of helping lay some of that foundation at least. So maybe talk specifically about what you did over at Crestron.
Yeah. So over at Crestron, when I first started there, so this was 2008. I think I'm bad with dates, so don't quote me, but I think it's 2008. And so, I started there and I was like an application engineer. I just sort of closed up my business and, which was a hardware company. And so I went to work there thinking I wanted to do firmware, and they actually got me involved in the application engineering group. And while I was there, initially, so like very soon, they asked me to work on a project for a trade show that was, it was going to be CEDIA. So it must have been CEDIA 2009. And they asked me to build essentially what would represent the next generation of touch panel technology for them. And so I had sort of laid out, I had a team. I remember we were crammed into a small conference room, actually the larger conference room, but it's still small. And crammed in this conference room with like 6 people. And we're like building for a trade show, like trying to get this demo done, building a brand new architecture. And it was supposed to plug in to, VT Pro and all the old technology that they've had. And it was pretty cool because, we got to build something from scratch. And so we built what was originally branded as Core 3 UI, had switched branding to Smart Graphics, and now is part of like the Ping ecosystem from what I understand. And so, for me and certainly for my team, that was like a pretty cool opportunity to, I'd like led a massive architectural overhaul for Crestron to bring them sort of current so that they could have the best touch panel technology in the industry, which actually, when I left there, I felt that we had very much accomplished that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I love the story, and I know a lot of our listeners will as well. We've got a lot of professional integrators in the audience, as well as, of course, a bunch of people who are just home technology enthusiasts and do-it-yourselfers. But I think particularly for the integrators in the audience, they're probably glad to hear that you've got a background pulling wire through dusty crawl spaces and attics, and all the way up to helping develop architectures at Crestron. So a very diverse background in the smart home. And one of the things that Seth and I, both being professional integrators, are consistently talking about is the fact that the smart home is in the news a lot now, and it's getting a ton of attention, but we've been doing this for a long time. A lot of this control and smart home technology has been around for decades, and it really, what's happening now that makes it exciting is that it's becoming much more approachable for a much broader range of the market, and it's really becoming more affordable and a lot easier to do. I think it still has a ways to go until it's truly mainstream, and we can possibly touch on some of the reasons why maybe you think that is. But with that by way of kind of a loose introduction, let's talk about Astro, and we'll get into your new your first product, Twist, which you, as we sit here and record this week, it was just released, so brand new release there, and I know you guys are excited about it. But before we jump into the specific product, just talk about Astro as a company and kind of the genesis for why you decided to start the company, and sort of what the vision is there.
Yes. So when I was at Crestron, I was playing with obviously a lot of the technology they had there. And so I was living in like a 550 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom in Astoria, Queens. I was driving, to New Jersey every day in the car. And, my boss, John Pavlik over there had really been very good to me. And he let me take home equipment pretty often, right? Equipment that was either end of life or was something that we were working on. I could take it home and I could play with it. And so I would take all this equipment home, pretty regularly. I would install it in my house. I would program it. I'd run wire, and I'd put holes in my wall and pray that my landlord wouldn't get me in trouble for it or ask my security deposit.
Right.
And after doing that for 3 years and 3 apartments, and then moving most recently to Brooklyn to a new apartment, I moved all the equipment, and I said, "This is just ridiculous. This sort of type of product is not just not for me, but it's not for people who live in major cities or move, right? Or move frequently, like specifically apartment renters or renters in general. This technology is designed for like suburban homes, right? 3,000 square foot homes. And so when I moved to Brooklyn, about a year and a half ago, I moved this like pristine, beautiful apartment. I was the first person living in it. It was still under construction when I moved there, and it was like literally brand new. And I just couldn't bring myself to put holes in the wall and like install light switches and run wire and mount speakers everywhere. And I said, I'm going to sell all this equipment. I sold an entire rack of equipment for not much on Craigslist. And I was like, I'm going to solve this problem a different way. And so I started buying Z-Wave light switches. I built up a couple of Raspberry Pi boxes. I did a whole bunch of stuff, wrote a whole bunch of software. And I was like, this is actually more ridiculous than the Crestron stuff.
Than running a few wires. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the most ridiculous thing I have ever done in my life. I wasted weekends doing it. And it was awful. And I said, there's got to be a different way to do this. And this cannot prevent this technology should be something everyone has access to. And so,
and so that's really the idea behind Astro, right? And I know you guys are marketing pretty heavily. I don't want to put words in your mouth and say that you're marketing exclusively, and you can speak to that. But I know, I've read through your website and looked at kind of the copy on there, and you guys are really kind of focused on a segment of the market that I think is underserved. The renter market. I rent out in Los Angeles, and I know for me that is a limiting factor. I don't have a ton of smart home technology in my own home because it's hard to do when you don't own the place and you can't actually go in and do kind of physical permanent installations. Now, thankfully, with companies like yours and products like Twist and obviously dozens of others out there on the market, it's becoming a lot easier. Maybe you can just speak generally before we jump into Twist, as a specific product, just kind of that choice and maybe some of the challenges that you see to smart home adoption with renters and people like that in the market who are looking to get into the smart home.
Yeah, so I think the smart home industry is noisy, right? There's every week there's another Kickstarter product, another Indiegogo product, or another even venture-backed product that is doing ostensibly what every other company has done for 30 years, right? So they're taking technology that was expensive, they're making it affordable, but it's still a massive technological barrier. And so, like I said, with Astro, we said if 100 million Americans rent, right? So almost a third of all Americans rent. If home ownership's at a 20-year low, what's the future of the smart home look like for millennials, for people who rent, or for people who live in small spaces? So the average apartment is 900 square feet, which is a really large apartment in most cities, right? But average square footage for an apartment is 900 square feet. The average square footage for a single family home is 3,000 square feet. So it's needless to say that the problems that people in small apartments face are very different than the problems that people in large suburban homes face. So the solutions have to look different. And that's not just installation, but how you interact with it, or what that system should do for you, or should it do anything for you, right? And those are the questions I asked when we started Astro. And I think specifically Twist is about solving or providing people who live in small spaces a solution that's non-invasive. It doesn't require crazy installation, doesn't require hiding wires, putting holes in your wall. It doesn't require installation or setup or someone as a professional person to come in and install it. And that was the goal for starting Astro. And I think Astro in general has a broader vision, which is making everyone have access to the smart home. And Twist is the first piece of that.
Yeah, definitely. So, let's jump into Twist. What is Twist? And you can give us kind of the quick view. Obviously, we're going to sort of spend the rest of the interview here talking about some of the details. And I've got a number of questions that jump to my mind that I want to discuss. And I hope our listeners will find interesting. But, just the 30,000-foot view, what exactly is Twist?
Yeah, so Twist is the first smart home platform designed for apartments. And the first set of products we're releasing is essentially a light bulb form factor. So it's a wirelessly controlled LED light bulb that has the full spectrum of whites to yellows. So it's the right light for the right time of day. It happens completely automatically. There's no setup. But then we said, look, a light bulb is a light bulb. And like, what can we do with this infrastructure that you have in your house? And so Twist is also a speaker that's a wireless AirPlay speaker. So it's lossless quality. It streams to one or multiple zones. And it's embedded inside of a light bulb, and it's this high fidelity audio experience, right? So we've actually used Timpani, which is a high end audiophile quality product. We used their smallest, highest quality driver that we could fit into a light bulb, and so we have this like sort of I don't want to say, but Sonos like experience for people who live in small apartments and don't want things to take up space or add to the clutter. And so now you have access to the smart home just by replacing a couple of light bulbs.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I love the idea. I think it looks like an exciting product. Let's talk about kind of specifics. I know on the website you guys have a $249 bundle. What's included if I buy that?
Yeah, so with that bundle, you get one light bulb speaker, you get 2 of our Twist light bulbs, and a dimmer. And the reason we include this dimmer is because we believe that the smart home experience shouldn't exist on mobile. It should exist in the real world, in like places that are tangible. And so we've built this analog-esque experience that bridges the digital world with like the tactile analog world. And so you have this audiophile style knob, this beautiful aluminum, like solid knob that you can use to control your lights. So you don't have to open an app or install some software. And like your significant other and friends don't have to have an app to control their lights, your lights, when they come to your house, which is a really weird paradigm that sort of the smart lighting industry is sort of stuck in.
Yeah, it's definitely that. You know, we'll start there, and then we'll get into some questions that I have about the speaker and how the lighting works exactly. But I love the idea of having a tactile dimmer. I think, you know, that's a topic that we at HomeTech hit on quite often. Is, you know, there are drawbacks to everything just being on an app, and one of the large examples that we often cite, just to sort of drive the point home, is like TV control in the media room. And a lot of companies now are, you know, coming out with apps that'll do that. But really, a lot of end users don't realize how annoying it is not to just be able to reach down and your hand just kind of knows where the volume button is. And, you know, to not have to grab your phone and flip it open and open an app just to change the channel. And so, you know, lighting is obviously, there's a parallel there in the sense that when you walk into a room, you don't want to have to open an app to turn the lights on. Lights are something that we have been conditioned to our whole lives, just to reach out, you know, hit a button, raise a dimmer, whatever it is, and it needs to just be instantaneous. So talk about that decision and elaborate a little bit. I mean, do you guys, is there just no app at all to control these? Is it strictly with the tactile dimmer?
No, so this is something we like. It's much debated internally as well as externally, right? We talk with a lot of people about this, and so what we feel is, in order to push people into the process of using this dimmer, we need to break this model that your app is your control, your point of control for your home, and so while from the application you can control your lights, it is highly discouraged, right? We essentially, the experience is really great. It's super easy, right? It's very intuitive. Mm-hmm. But the benefit of this product is that you don't have to do that.
Right.
And you're not supposed to do that. And your light works like a light bulb, right? So when you turn it off, it turns off. When you turn it on, it remembers its last setting. And then what's kind of cool is the device is all synchronized with the time of day. And so when you turn them on, they'll all know what color temperature to be, what brightness to be based on the time of day. And that happens pretty instantaneously because we built our own mesh network to solve some of these problems. Mm-hmm. And so the dimmer plays an important role in that it brings what is the wall switch experience and brings it to anywhere that's convenient for you, perhaps your bedside or a kitchen counter or your coffee table. And so it takes what's a really convenient experience, but fixed, and as in your light switch being on the wall, and it moves it wherever you need it.
Yeah.
Without forcing you to be beholden to an app. And it also gives you the freedom of your guests know how to use your lights.
Which is a huge thing. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of smart home technology where it
it can be a little bit complicated. Once you've used the app a couple of times, it becomes very easy. But then what happens when you have a babysitter or guests come into town? Then it kind of gives you a different perspective on it. And so I think I agree with you there. I have one other question about the dimmer. How does the pairing work? And what I'm asking specifically is, if I bought the $249 bundle and I get, X number of lights with that and the dimmer, and then like if I wanted to add more lights to that, maybe that given room, could I pair those with an existing dimmer? Or conversely, what if like maybe I wanted two dimmers, maybe one on each nightstand or something to control the same lights? Can that be done?
Yeah, so the only part of the process that requires setup, actually isn't required, but where setup is desirable, right, where you go through a setup process is you essentially like install all these devices, right? So you screw in a couple of light bulbs. Let's say you're in your bedroom. You have a dimmer. It's powered on. It lasts, by the way, 2 years on 4 AAA batteries, which we include. And so you like put this on a nightstand, and then you go and you say, I'm going to set up this product. And so you install the app. And the first thing it says is, what room are you in? And you say, okay, I'm in my master bedroom. So you click next. And then from there, it takes all the devices it sees and it turns them sort of unique colors. And so what you do is you go through a list of colors and you identify, okay, red, green, and blue are in my master bedroom, and you hit next. And now all of a sudden, red, green, and blue are linked together to your master bedroom. And so you've created a group. And so the dimmer controls the group that you put it in. So you could put 5 dimmers in a room.
Got it.
You could put 1 dimmer, you could put no dimmers. And same with the light bulbs. There's no limit to how many you could put into a room. Theoretically, there's no limit, right? And so now you have a sort of a similar experience to how you create like loads or groups in like Crestron Control 4 world. But now it's like a really seamless, easy experience. And once you set it, you can sort of forget about that process.
Yeah, very cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. Let's jump into the speaker, because I think that's probably something people are dying to hear about. I mean, that's a pretty unique feature to have a speaker integrated right into your light bulb. And, we'll start off with, I just have to ask like about some of the engineering challenges and you kind of alluded to it, but maybe elaborate on the sound quality. I think a lot of people, if we're honest, might be skeptical, like how a light bulb could produce really quality sound. So maybe you can speak about the engineering process, some of the challenges there, and how you feel the results of that effort came out.
So I think the best thing for me has been recently, since we like sort of unveiled it yesterday, but for 2 weeks now, I've been talking to the press and doing demos. And the best thing is walking to a room where someone says to you, there's no way this thing is going to sound good. And you screw it into a light socket and you turn it on and you connect it to AirPlay and you hit play. And I play, there's an article from MIT Tech Review that says I played KRS-One for Everyone, which is like a old school hip hop. And the reason we chose that is because it like is mids, highs, and lows, and it really demonstrates that this experience is full range. Now, it's not going to sound like you put a subwoofer, like the subwoofers in your car, right? Like your old school Civic. But this is a full range audio experience. And the point of it is that, and I'll talk about the engineering as well, but the point of this product is that you put this audio experience where perhaps you couldn't get it before, or getting it there took up too much space, had required you to run wire. And so it's complementary to your high fidelity home entertainment system, but it's not to replace your home entertainment system. And so the challenges with putting a speaker inside a light bulb are sort of numerous. But we developed this really cool architecture that we start with day one. I was like, this is how we're going to build this thing. And I had our electrical engineer, and I said, because I have an electrical engineering background, and I was like, I'm pretty sure we could build this in a modular way that we can like essentially put a ring of light around the speaker. And which is, if you look at the product, that's kind of what it looks like. Mm-hmm. We can diffuse this light really evenly, which is like a huge engineering challenge, by the way. We probably made 50 prototypes to get there. We essentially built this like really awesome diffusive technology that allows us to get like a really great amount of light radiating from the device, even though there's a speaker at the center of it. And so it's still an awesome light bulb, right? That's the most important thing. And then being able to get the sound out of the product and sounding awesome was we had this discussion where we created what internally we called a waveguide. And so we had this like sloping recessed angle that like we could put the speaker inside unobstructed, so it doesn't have like that mesh or wire over it. And because of that, it's like this unmuffled, like this beautiful, crisp experience. And so once we accomplished that, we were like, well, how do we jam all these electronics into this thing? Because we designed and we 3D printed. 3D printing was like massively important to this process. So we had like 10 3D printers and we just printed tons of stuff. And so we would print these things and we would like stick some speaker wire in it and stick the speaker in it and build different speaker driver enclosures and test them and hang them from the ceiling and glue them into light sockets and like see what sounded good. And that's how we landed at like the shape that you see. It's how we created enough space behind the device, like behind the speaker, to be able to project audio and create like a bassy sound. And it's one of those experiences, like, you know, it's a challenge for us is to communicate how good this product really is, visually. Right. And so it's like one of those things that when you hear it, you're like, wow, that just came out of a light bulb. And that's a pretty cool experience.
That's really cool. I think we could probably do an entire episode just on the engineering of that and how that comes together. I'd love to learn more sometime, or, you know, hopefully I can get a chance to get my hands on one of these someday and kind of listen to it myself. One question about the stereo, or I'm sorry, not the stereo, but about the speakers that I did have is like, if the lights are off, and it's kind of a two-part question, because you could have this light bulb screwed into a socket, say in like a permanently installed light fixture, or it could be installed in like a lamp that's then maybe plugged into an outlet that could potentially be a switched outlet, and maybe so you can address probably, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming those are sort of two different cases that you might have to address separately. But how does that work? Does the speaker work if the lights are off?
So you have discrete control over the lighting element and the speaker element. But plugging something into the wall and turning a light switch on and off are exactly the same thing. So if you turn the light switch off, you essentially cut power to the device. There's no amount of engineering that we can do to solve that. And so if you want to listen to music, you're going to need to have the light switch on. The thought about that is that if you're in the room, your lights are probably on.
Right.
If you don't want the lights on, you can turn them off from the dimmer.
From the dimmer.
Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, so if this is hooked into like a permanent fixture or even a switched outlet, you got to have, you leave the switch on, but essentially at that point, the dimmer that you bought is your switch. And so that becomes basically your primary, or in some cases, maybe even your sole point of control at that point. So that makes sense.
But I'd like to also mention that, like, you still use your light switch, right? Like, you walk out of the room and you're going to bed or you're leaving the house, turn your lights off.
Right.
Don't use the dimmer to do that. Use your light switch to do that. That is a encouraged behavior. But when you walk in the room, you're probably going to turn the light switch on, turn the lights on, and then you can listen to music.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Let's, again, could probably spend a ton more time on the sound, but I know we've kind of got to jump into the light here. I do want to talk about that. Obviously, like you said, making a quality light bulb is really super important. I mean, if you had gone to all this trouble to create a light bulb that had a speaker in it, and, you know, you go to all this trouble of engineering the sound, but you make kind of a subpar light bulb that nobody likes kind of the look of, then obviously you've done yourself a big disservice there. So maybe talk about kind of the light a little bit. And one of the specific things that I think is interesting that I'd love to hear you elaborate on is how it auto adjusts throughout the day. And I'd love to hear a little about that and how it works. Is that a time-based thing? Is there some sort of light sensor in it? So go ahead and just kind of tell our listeners a little about the light itself.
Yeah, so there's a few things that like are considered to be how like light is perceived as good quality, right? So have you ever been in the office late and had like fluorescent light overhead, and so it's dark out, you look out the window, it's like pitch black, but your lights are like completely white and like horrifyingly white, and like that's, you feel like this is like unnatural, right? And so that's like the perception of light quality, right? And so the reason we built a product that transitions from white in the morning to yellow in the evening is because that is really important to what you believe to be quality of light. And when you buy a standard light bulb today, you're forced to make a decision. Do I want white light or do I want yellow light?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of archaic, right? Because you don't actually want one or the other. You need both, right? That's like the benefit to this product is that you get access to both, and it happens automatically.
And it's kind of like a product of how our brains are wired, right? Like I'm assuming basically that's based on just kind of in the natural world, light throughout the day is sort of shifting color, and so the light bulb is kind of mimicking that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah. So what we do is we actually have network time that we can keep on the devices. And so we can know what time of day it is, where you live, right? What region of the world you live in, what the season is, and even what the weather is. And so based on that, we can essentially provide the correct quality of light based on the time of day. And you don't have to do anything. It just does it for you. And you can dim the light on your own. So you have full control over dimming it, right? Or turning it on and off. But you don't need control over like being able to say, is it white or is it yellow? Because it's sort of implied that this is the way it should be. And we will give you like a really great like lighting experience that you've never had before. And like, I'm willing to bet you will never live without the second you live with this product. I'm betting my business on it. In fact.
Yeah, you put your money where your mouth is there. Yeah, so like you said, you have control of dimming, so basically the brightness level, but throughout the day, it's going to automatically kind of change from a white to a yellow light, which I think is cool. I was just interested to kind of hear how that works in terms of, it sounds like it's a time-based thing, and my initial thought was, well, what if it's like, what if it's really cloudy or really sunny? Is that sort of taken into account? It sounds like you guys are sort of pulling some weather data and kind of using that in the equation as well there.
Yeah, and so we're thinking about like what's the right quality of light for the environmental environment at this point in time, and so it's not based on ambient light. It's based on like, because ambient light is different in everyone's apartment and different in every room, and like so we did it based on the external factors, right? That we could pull from both the internet and time,
yep.
And so yeah, it's like super intuitive. It's really cool.
Do you guys have the ability with the lights to set it to a schedule? I know a lot of our clients, when we do lighting control systems, enjoy that feature of, maybe being able to automate a few lights. Common use case, that a lot of people cite would be if you're out of town, kind of turn lights on and turn them off at a given time to kind of give the appearance that you're home. Do you guys have anything like that built into the product?
Not today. It's not to say we haven't experimented with actually our first prototypes, like the cloud-based stuff, because everything's local mostly, but we have a cloud infrastructure. And so when we started building it, we said we should do this feature, and then it added so much complexity to the feature, to the product, that we've for now we've foregone including that feature. And the thinking behind this is, not that you asked, but the thinking behind this is that we're making the simplest set of features we can deliver upon so that we can get these types of products into people's hands and like have an enjoyable experience. And then we will layer on functionality over time. And so that's a type of feature that you'll probably see come from us, like in a software update in the future. But today we're focused on awesome quality lighting, mm-hmm. awesome audio, and really great control from like an analog-esque experience.
Got it. There's also a feature on the light, the night light, and it sounds like this glows kind of a purple color. I think you guys call it twist purple, if I remember right, from reading on the website. And, yep. And talk about the night light. How does that work? Is it something that you can choose to enable or disable, and just kind of elaborate a little on that?
Yeah. So the way it works is it gets set up per group. So let's say you have a hallway or a bathroom. You would be able to say, in this bathroom, I would like the nightlight feature. And so you just set it. And so what happens is when you turn the lights off, you turn them off, let's say at midnight, and you go to bed, you have this like beautiful ambient purple, and it's about, somewhere around 100 lumens. So it's about a sixth of the power of or light of a 60-watt light bulb. Mm-hmm. So there's like beautiful, like welcoming ambient purple glow that gives you enough light that like in the middle of the night, you don't have to turn the lights on. If you want to get a glass of water or you want to like, go to the bathroom, you don't have to like flick the lights on and be jarred, because that experience is like always jarring no matter what. And so that was the thinking behind it, is that we could provide the right lighting throughout the entire spectrum of the day, and then like not ignoring like midnight, right?
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. So anyways, we're kind of running up against our time here. I do want to ask, this is a very common question on our show, Seth and I being integrators, and we typically want to find out, like, do you guys have any plans for third-party integration? I know your approach is pretty unique in terms of, trying to keep a product very super simple and concentrate on a core feature set. Are you guys talking about third-party integration through an API, or if this then that, or is that even on the roadmap?
So it's not on the roadmap. We are closely defending we're being very cautious about who we have conversations with and what types of integrations we provide. And so, and we're doing it to the benefit of what feels the benefit of the consumer, right? Is that like this product, your end-to-end experience with this product will be superior to anything you've ever had. And that's the goal, is that you should have the touch points we have with our consumers, we fully own. And so that means that we can be fully accountable for that response, like that experience. Mm-hmm. And that includes ordering to like customer support to adding new features or new products. We're completely vertically integrated. And so the best way to give the best experience to consumers is to not integrate with anyone else. And that's the ethos for now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting and in a way it's sort of refreshing. I mean, listen, I'm an integrator and I like when things tie into third-party integration because that's what I do for a living. But I get that there are drawbacks to that. I mean, I live and breathe it every day, and so many of the challenges that we deal with on a day-to-day basis as integrators have to do with the fact that you've got all kinds of hardware from different manufacturers, and you're trying to make it all play nice together. And that, as a systems integrator, is literally the value that we provide. And that's why we're called integrators. And obviously we've got a stake in that, but it's, you guys have your target market. And I think that there are definitely advantages to, like you said, keeping it vertically integrated and just making sure that you can provide kind of the best solution out there to do what you guys are trying to do. So I think that's interesting, and I commend you for taking a stance on that. That I think a lot of other manufacturers, maybe feel that way, but end up going out and doing integrations anyways, and for better or worse, that's just kind of maybe how things go. But like I said, we're kind of up against our time here. I know the product's up for pre-order now. When will the product be shipping?
Early 2016.
Okay. And if our listeners wanted to connect with you or maybe find out more about you or the product, what would be the best way for them to do that?
You could reach out to me on Twitter if that's like a medium that people want, which is Shaun_Springer. My name is spelled Shaun. Most people don't end up knowing that. But reach out to me, or Shaun, Shaun at Astro.ai, or just ping us hellotwist.com. Always happy to have a chat and show a demo and talk to people. This is my life for many years, so I love talking about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll include links to all that in the show notes at HomeTech.fm/shows/69. So once again, Shaun, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know it's been probably a crazy busy week for you, and we really appreciate you coming on Home Tech to share your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, you got it. We'll let you go. Take care, Shaun.
All right, take care.